Hello fellow Kaibas, my name is VideoJames, and today we're going to be doing a Blue Eyes White Dragon deck profile. So I said last week in my Cipher the Sky Dragon deck profile that I was going to be doing a Blue Eyes White Dragon the week after that one, and surprise surprise, it's the week after that one. So today we're just going to be doing a profile on my Blue Eyes White Dragon deck. Now I want to preface this video by saying I am running proxies in this deck, and the reason for that is because a lot of the cards in this deck are well over the price range that I'm willing to pay to just have the card, to not use it in a legal tournament, or to just have an incomplete deck. So I did print out proxies of these cards a while ago, just so that I could finish the deck and have it completely done, because Blue Eyes, Alternative White Dragon, and Sage with Eyes of Blue are still extremely expensive, and a lot of the other cards in this deck have risen to extremely high prices. So I wanted to preface it by saying that, also that I do not sell these proxies. I really only did this once, and that was to complete the Blue Eyes deck. Also, that I do not use them in any tournaments, so I can't really use them illegally if I'm not using them in any tournaments. But yeah, we're going to be doing a Blue Eyes profile today. I just wanted to preface the video by saying that, and Blue Eyes is actually the first actual deck that I played with. It was the first actual, deck structure that I built with the Saga of the Blue Eyes. When that came out, I bought 3 of those so that I could make an actual Blue Eyes deck out of that and have it run. And it ran pretty well for a while. Eventually some more difficult decks came up, and it was harder for me to actually get in the running with them. And with Blue Eyes getting very little support other than Maiden, we didn't really have much way to combat the new stuff. But then, thanks to 2016, 17, and 18, we're getting a bunch of new Blue Eyes support, so we are actually getting a bunch of stuff so you can just beef up the Blue Eyes with. But this is going to be my deck profile. This is just how I usually run them, so if you see any cards that you don't really like, you can swap them out if you want to. But this is how I play the deck. I find it to be extremely efficient, not only with friendly play, but also with competitive play on YGO. That on YGO I actually try out this deck against other people, and it works out very well. So it is actually a very useful deck, both competitive and friendly. So without further ado, let's just get into the deck build. So starting out with the monsters, we've got, of course, 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons and 3 Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragons. Now, everyone knows what Blue Eyes does. Everyone knows what Blue Eyes is. It's been out for so long. Everyone knows what Blue Eyes does. But if you don't know what Alternative does, it is basically a level 8 effect version of Blue Eyes, which says you have to reveal a Blue Eyes from your hand in order to special summon this card, and it must first be special summoned by this way, and you can only special summon it once per turn. This card's name becomes Blue Eyes White Dragon while it is on the field or in the graveyard. And basically, once per turn, you can target one monster your opponent controls and destroy it, but Alternative can't attack for that turn. So it's basically just a Blue Eyes with an extra nuke. It basically just factors as level 8 trade fodder, or Xxes fodder, or Synchro fodder, or Fusion fodder for stuff like Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon, that you sacrifice a Blue Eyes Alternative and a Blue Eyes and get Twin Burst out. Or you could use 3 of them and get Neo Blue Eyes out. And yes, I do still run Neo Blue Eyes. I know some people are probably going to question why, but I still believe that Neo has some very useful benefits to it. Now moving on, we got 2 White Spirit Dragon. Everyone knows what White Spirit Dragon does by now. We've got 1 Deep Eyes. Deep Eyes I really like running just for when people nuke the Blue Eyes in my deck. That if someone tries to nuke my Blue Eyes cards with a Raigeki or with some of their monsters' card effects, I can be like, okay, Deep Eyes, you're going to take the damage from my summon, and now I'm going to have a second Blue Eyes, basically. And then for the tuners, we've got 3 White Stone of Ancients and 1 White Stone of Legend. Now, I do believe that running this set of the stones is actually useful. Running all 4 is actually nice. You don't really want to run more than 1 White Stone of Legend. I've seen some people cut Ancients down to 2, but I found that that doesn't really work out as well, so you usually want to run 3. But if you don't know what White Stone of Ancients does, basically, during the end phase of the turn it was sent to the graveyard, you can summon a Blue Eyes monster from your deck, be it Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dragon Spirit of White, and you can banish it from the graveyard to add a Blue Eyes from your graveyard to your hand. So, like, say I sent a Blue-Eyes Spirit Dragon to the grave, or it got destroyed, then I can use White Stone of Ancients effect to put it back in the extra deck, and then I just have it for later. And on top of those, we run 3 Sage with Eyes of Blue. Sage with Eyes of Blue is basically a hand trap, almost. Basically what he does, you discard him, target an effect monster in your field, send that monster to the graveyard, and then you can special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your deck. So he's very useful in getting out the level 8s, like Spirit of White and Blue Eyes. He's also useful as a tuner, and if you normal summon him, you can add another tuner besides Sage, so you can add White Stone of Ancients, you can add White Stone of Legend, you can add Effect Veiler if you need Effect Veiler, you can add Ghost Ashes. Ghost Ashes works out well. Basically, Sage just works out all around in the deck. And then for the staple monsters, we basically have 1 Maiden with Eyes of Blue, 1 Effect Veiler, and 1 Arkbrave Dragon. Now, I've seen some people take out Arkbrave Dragon and replace it with a Morphage Goliath, and that can work. I've seen some instances where that works, and it does kind of work as the level 8 trade fodder. However, with the kind of bringing back that we get now with all the Reborn cards, I feel like Arkbrave does get more potential now than he used to, so we actually do still get a lot of decent usage out of Arkbrave. Plus, I just really like the effect of Arkbrave. It's really useful for me in clearing a lot of the field sometimes. And then moving on to the spells, we have 3 Melody of Awakening Dragon. This is another card that was really expensive up until recently. I think it's gone down to like $5 since recently. So what it does is basically you discard 1 card and add up to 2 Dragon-type monsters with 3,000 or more attack and 2,500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. So say I were to discard White Stone of Legend and send it to the graveyard due to Melody effect, then I can use Melody effect to add Blue Eyes Alternative and a Blue Eyes White Dragon. And then because of White Stone of Ancients, White Stone of Legend, I'll actually get another Blue Eyes to my hand. And because of that, I can activate Trade-In to get rid of one of them, get some extra draw power, and then I can just summon the alternative and maybe activate, like, Return of the Dragon Lords, or Silver's Cry, or Monster Reborn or something, and just bring that Blue Eyes back and actually have stuff for, like, the Xxes or the Fusion, or whatever I'm trying to pull off. So it can just... Melody can work in all around basically any scenario you put it in. And then for the trade power, we have 3 Trade-In and 1 Cards of Consonance. Now, these things are all very useful in this deck because of all the level 8s and the level 1s that we have in here. So since we have so many level 8s like Blue Eyes, Spirit of White, Alternative, then we can just use Trade-In, send them all to the grave, or send one of them to the grave, and we'll get to draw an extra 2 cards, and then we can bring that dragon back. And with all the Reborn cards we're able to run now, we'll actually have a lot of potential to bring those back. Plus, with Cards of Consonance, we're able to kick off the White Stone of Ancients and the White Stone of Legend effect. In fact, a little bit of trivia here, White Stone of Legend is actually what's depicted on Cards of Consonance. So, you can basically just use that, get their effect off, and get a Blue Eyes to your hand or field, and it just helps out all around. Plus, it gives you that extra draw power, so it's basically like Pot of Greed for a drawback. Then moving on, we got 2 Dragon Shrine. You really want to run 2 now. With all the Reborn cards and all the stuff, you really want to run 2 Dragon Shrine, just because it's extremely useful in getting your dragons to the field faster and just getting stuff that you need. So if you don't know what Dragon Shrine does by now, I don't know how you couldn't know. But basically, it lets you send a dragon type from your deck to the grave, and if it was a normal monster, then you can send another dragon to the grave. So what I really like to do with this is, there's an actual combo that I've been pulling off for a long time. But the combo I really love pulling off with this is using Arkbrave and Spirit of White. So what I do is I take Spirit of White, and since it counts as a normal monster in the grave, I can send another one. So I use that, and I send Arkbrave to the grave. And then next turn, I can use Arkbrave's effect, which is basically if he's sent to the grave during the next standby phase of your opponent, then you can target 1 level 7 or 8 dragon in your graveyard and bring it back to the field. So basically, we just use Arkbrave's effect, bring back Spirit of White, and then we just basically get a dragon for almost absolutely nothing. Plus, we can use Arkbrave's effect to bring itself, we can't use Arkbrave's effect. We can use a Reborn card to bring Arkbrave back from the graveyard, and use him as kind of a spell and trap clearing thing. And then for the Reborn cards, we've got 3 Return of the Dragon Lords, 1 Silver's Cry, and 1 Monster Reborn. Yes, I am running Monster Reborn. Now, since the June ban list actually let this back on, I immediately threw a Monster Reborn into the Blue Eyes deck, just because I'm like, okay, Return isn't enough, Silver isn't enough, I need to run this Monster Reborn. And I gotta say, it helps out a lot. Monster Reborn just lets you bring back so much more than you ever could, and it just helps you so much with what you need to. So basically, all these Reborn cards, this is the amount you want to run. I've seen some people cut out the Silvers entirely and replace it with something else, but I still believe that Silver has some merit to it, that it can be used to bring out Spirit of White, it can be used to bring out Blue Eyes, it can just be used to bring out a bunch of level 8s, even though it can only really use 1. And then we got Return of the Dragon Lords. Basically, you can use that on almost any dragon in the main deck, and you'll just be able to bring them right back out to the field. So all these cards actually work out really well, and Return actually works out as kind of a blocker almost, kind of like an Azure-Eyes. So basically what happens is, if your dragon-type monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish Return from your grave instead, and those monsters wouldn't get destroyed. I have Arkbrave and Spirit of White destroyed by a Raigeki. Then I use Return of the Dragon Lord, banish it from the grave, and they're safe for at least 1 turn. So basically, all those Reborn cards just work out really well in not only bringing back the monsters, but sometimes protecting them as well. And then with the staple cards, we've got Poly just for the fusion, for if we need to get out a Twin Burst or a Neo, and we can't really do it by tributing. We got Raigeki, we got Twin Twister for spell and trap cards, we've got Soul Charge as another Reborn card, and then we've got Upstart Goblin just for an extra draw power. So that basically covers the spells. These staples do really help out a lot. I can't tell you how many times Twin Twister or Raigeki have saved my rear. Upstart Goblin and Soul Charge don't really help out that much, because a lot of time with Upstart I end up drawing something completely unuseful. So I feel like it's kind of a curse on Upstart to begin with. But Soul Charge can actually help out if you need to just bring back a flurry of dragons, and it actually does work out very well. And then for the trap cards, yes, I'm running 2 trap cards in this Blue Eyes deck. I never really ran them before, except for when I ran Royal Decree, and that was kind of a bad idea because I was still running Maiden at the time and not a pure Blue Eyes Dragon deck. So it was like, okay, that's kind of bad, I should take that out. So now I'm running 1 Solemn Judgement and 1 Solemn Warning. I would run Solemn Strike, but I can't really get it off as much as I can with Solemn Warning. So I like using Solemn Warning and Judgment, just because they work out a lot better and the cost is kind of less painful. So Solemn Judgment, when a monster is summoned or a spell or trap is activated, you can pay half your life points to negate the activation or summon and destroy it. So it's basically like Solemn Warning but beefed up. And then Solemn Warning, when a monster would be summoned or a spell, trap, or monster effect activates that would special summon, you can pay 2,000, negate the summon, and destroy it. So really, in total, the most these things can ever happen to cost you is 6,000, or 5,000 if you use Warning then Judgment, and knock you down by 5,000. So really, they don't really draw you back that much, and that's why I like running them. I wouldn't say put in 2 Solemn Strike, because that kind of cuts you down a little too much, and it kind of limits you from drawing what you need to. You could run it. I would suggest taking something out first, though, because you don't really want it to clog up. But for me, I felt like it kind of clogged the deck too much, so I really only run 2 traps, just because they don't really ever help as much unless they're on the field. Meanwhile, the spells are kind of more fast-paced, and they're more ready for what Blue Eyes wants to do. And then moving on to the extra deck, I'm running 1 Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon and 2 Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. So basically, Neo Blue Eyes takes 3 Blue Eyes like regular Ultimate, and at the end of the damage step, if Neo Blue Eyes was the only card you control and it attacked, you can send a Blue Eyes Fusion from your extra deck to the graveyard, and Neo can attack again, and you can do this twice. So say I attacked with Neo Ultimate, and it was the only card on my field, and I had, say, 2 Twin Bursts still in my extra deck, then I can basically just send both Twin Bursts to my grave, and Neo Blue Eyes will get a total of 3 attacks during that turn. And then Twin Burst actually is just a double Blue Eyes fusion. And basically what it says is it has to be fusion summoned by either sending 2 Blue Eyes on your field to the grave, or by using Poly, in which you actually have to use Polymerization. And it can't really be summoned by other ways, and it also can't be destroyed by battle. So I find it's like a nice wall that if I'm running up against something that's kind of kicking me in the rear and I don't really have anything to stop it, I just throw out Twin Burst and I kind of got a tiny bit of wall. And it also helps with stuff like Marshmallow, that if you're running up against a Marshmallow and you can't destroy it, then Twin Burst effect will actually allow you to banish that monster instead of destroying it if it attacked it and it didn't destroy it. And it's a basic 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense, so it's basically a Blue Eyes with a much beefed up effect. And then for the Synchro Monsters, I'm running 2 Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, 2 Azure-Eyes Silver Dragon, 1 Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, and 1 Ancient Fairy Dragon. Now, Ancient Fairy Dragon helps out a lot with stuff like ABC Dragon Buster, because it really does help just get rid of that ABC Dragon Busters and a lot of other stuff like spell books. You don't want those field spells out, so you can kind of just use Ancient Fairy with effect of Spirit Dragon, bring it out onto the field in defense mode, and then you can just end up getting rid of their field spell and using it to your advantage. And then we got, of course, Azure-Eyes is basically the main synchro that you got for this Blue Eyes deck. You always run an Azure-Eyes in a Blue Eyes. You got Spirit Dragon. That Spirit Dragon is basically used to get out all your other synchros, or to just get out a synchro that you can use to kind of negate effects in the graveyard. That if an effect in the graveyard deck is basically what you're running up against, like, say, Madolche, then you use Spirit Dragon to negate the effect, and you can basically just keep that card in the grave. And then for the Xyz, I'm running 1 Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand, 1 Galaxy-Eyes Cipher Dragon, 1 Galaxy-Eyes Full Armor Photon Dragon, 1 number 38, 1 number 62, and 1 number 95. So these are a lot of Galaxy-Eyes, but the Xyz are really what you use to just like nuke the field and completely shut your opponent down. So basically, Felgrand is your protection against targeting, that you can basically make 1 dragon type in your field unaffected by any card effects. So he's kind of that invincible shield for at least 1 turn. And then we got Cipher, basically lets you take control of one of your opponent's monsters, and it becomes a 3,000 attack point monster, and its name gets changed to Galaxy-Eyes Cipher Dragon. Now, what I really like about Cipher is that you can take any monster. So, well, any face-up monster. So, say my opponent had, I'm just going to use Felgrand on an example. Say I had Cipher out and my opponent had Felgrand, and Felgrand had no materials left. Well, I detach an Xyz material from Cipher, I use its effect to take control of the Felgrand, and now I have another Galaxy-Eyes Cipher Dragon on my field. And since I have another Galaxy-Eyes Xyz monster, I can actually do a double Xyz summon. So I can go with getting the 2 Galaxy-Eyes that are extra in my deck out onto the field. So I can get both Full Armor and number 95. So basically what I like to do is I like to usually take the monster that has the 1 Xyz material and attach number 95 to it, and then I use my Galaxy-Eyes Full Armor on Galaxy-Eyes Cipher just so that I can get the extra Xyz materials onto Armor Photon. And then what Armor Photon does is basically you detach an Xyz material, you can destroy 1 face-up card your opponent controls. So it's basically like a 1-card nuke. And what number 95 does is you detach an Xyz material from it, and it can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase's turn. So that's why I only really give it 1 Xyz material, because with Galaxy-Eyes Full Armor and number 95 on the field, you don't really need to attack that much, because your opponent's probably not going to have that much left on their field after you're done nuking. So I really only keep 1 Xyz materials on this. But basically, I really like running this thing because you can send 3 dragons from your deck to the grave, and your opponent has to banish 3 monsters from their deck. And that works out really well because most of the dragons in our deck, we kind of want to send them to the grave anyway. So we can just ditch a Blue Eyes, ditch a White Stone of Legend, and ditch, let's say, Arkbrave. That if you haven't ditched Arkbrave, you can just send that to the grave as well, and you can just get the effect off from Arkbrave as well, if I knew where... There it is. So you just send Blue Eyes, White Stone, and Arkbrave to the grave for useless grave fodder. You use White Stone's effect, you get a Blue Eyes back to your hand if you haven't already had all 3 of them in the grave. And then number 95 makes your opponent banish 3 monsters. So it's really useful in just kind of slowing your opponent down and knocking out a lot of their deck. And with monster-oriented decks, it really is a pain in the rear. And then we got number 38 and number 62. Now, number 62 in this deck can really be useful. So, say I had number 38 on the field at the same time as number 62. I can use number 62's effect, and if it attacks, I can attach an Xyz material, and he'll gain the combined rank of all Xyz material, or Xyz monsters on the field, times 200 in attack points. So, I see I have 2 rank 8 Xyz monsters on the field, meaning he'll get 16,000, or yeah, no, 1,600, not 16,000, what am I thinking? And he'll go up to a 5,600 attack point monster. However, if he doesn't have a Galaxy-Eyes monster, well, a Galaxy-Eyes Photon Dragon, as an Xyz material, he actually isn't going to be able to get the attack damage off because it'll cut his attack damage in half. So it's basically kind of like a double-edged blade that you won't really be able to do much damage since we're not really running a Galaxy-Eyes in this deck. And it doesn't really help out as much, but it can still whip out a massive amount of damage on your opponent. Especially if you got all the Xyz on the field, or you got like 3 of them, you can just do massive amounts of damage with Prime Photon. And number 38 basically acts as our spell canceller that once per turn, if your opponent activates a spell card, you can negate the activation and add it to Harbinger as an Xyz material, which helps out really well in stuff like spellbooks and pendulums, that your opponent activates a pendulum card, you use Harbinger's effect, and attach it to Harbinger as an Xyz material, so you kind of shut down their chance to pendulum. And another thing about Harbinger is he basically acts as a battle shield. So once per turn during damage calculation of another dragon-type monster you control is being targeted, you can detach an Xyz material from Harbinger, and the attack target will go to him instead, and the damage calculation will happen there. And it basically just really is nice. And if a face-up Xyz you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target an Xyz monster you control, and it gains attack equal to one of those destroyed monster's original attacks. So say I had both 62 and number 38 on the field again, and number 62 gets destroyed. Harbinger's effect, I can actually target one face-up Xyz monster, and it doesn't say it has to be a monster other than Harbinger, so I can just target Harbinger and make its attack equal to itself. Or I can make it equal to, say, Galaxy-Eyes Full Armor. Really, just either way, Harbinger acts as an amazing battle shield and just an amazing Xyz monster in basically any rank 8 deck that you can ever get him in. So that is going to be it for my Blue Eyes deck profile. Like I said, this deck does work out very well. It is very strong in both competitive and friend play. I have whooped a lot of rear with my Blue Eyes in the past, and even before this ban list came out, I still kicked a lot of rear. But I really just love running Blue Eyes because they're such a fast-paced, strong deck, and I really just love running them, especially since they were the first archetype I ever started running, and people were just, when I was playing with my friends that I made in high school, and they were teaching me how to play, and it was just such a good time for me, and I absolutely had a blast, and it really cemented Blue Eyes as my favorite deck archetype. But for now, I'm going to leave this video here. I'll leave the deck list in the description below in case some of you guys didn't catch some of the cards. I don't know what the next one I'll do is. I don't know if I'll do a next one because the next closest deck I'll be able to make is the Dark Magicians, and that's still going to take a lot of money. Like, okay, if you don't know how much the Dark Magician decks are going to cost, think somewhere around $150 for the remaining cards I have, and I only have about half the deck. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of money to finish that. But anyway, for now I'm leaving this video here. If you guys liked it, you can slap the like button as always, and I'll see all you beautiful people in the next video.